They called it a reassignment. No notice, no explanation, no farewell. I was told to pack my things, report to Hangar 6 at 0400, and say nothing to anyone. The man who delivered the orders wasn't in uniform. His ID badge was blank. He didn't knock. He was already in my apartment when I got home. He handed me the envelope, gave a single nod, and left before I could ask where I was going. The paperwork said, Sector P, Observation and Containment Support. No coordinates, no contact information. Just a manifest code, Horizon 9. I assumed it was a ship. It wasn't. It was a tower. We reached it after 6 hours of flying over nothing. Blue sky, blue ocean, no land in sight. I counted 37 seconds of turbulence that didn't register on the pilot's instruments. He didn't react. I tried to speak twice. He didn't answer. His earpiece blinked red the entire time. The tower appeared all at once. One moment there was only water. The next, it was there. Rising from the sea like a needle driven through the planet's skin. Matte gray. No windows. No markings. It was tall. Impossibly tall for something anchored in the middle of the Pacific with no visible base. The helicopter didn't circle. It descended immediately, straight down onto the landing pad near the structure's apex. No fanfare. No radio contact. The rotors powered down, and the pilot nodded once toward the hatch. That was the last time I saw him. A woman in a white jumpsuit met me at the platform. No rank, no insignia. She didn't say her name, just held out a clipboard and motioned for me to sign. The form listed me as an Asset Observer Tier 3. It wasn't my title. I signed anyway. The elevator didn't have buttons. It descended automatically. The interior was mirror black. The lights buzzed in a tone I couldn't place. Somewhere between a failing fluorescent and a tuning fork. My ears popped. My nose bled faintly. When the doors opened, I was on level 7. I never chose it. The hallway was warm. Too warm. No windows. No natural light. The floor vibrated softly with a pulse I felt more than heard. No one explained anything. A man in a gray vest handed me a tablet. It contained a floor plan. Partial. Access was limited to levels 5 through 9. Every other floor was marked redacted. The tablet vibrated once every 90 seconds, even when idle. It never connected to Wi-Fi. My quarters were sterile. One bed. One desk, no mirror. The sink drained into darkness too black to be water. The walls were off-white but had a sheen like dried skin. The lights didn't turn off, only dimmed to a low red glow after 2200. The other staff didn't talk. They nodded sometimes. But no one introduced themselves. I saw the same faces at the mess hall every day. 3 meals, exactly 20 minutes, never overlapping. Everyone sat in the same spot. I once tried sitting in a different chair and was asked to move by a technician with hands that trembled too fast for someone supposedly calm. The food tasted fine, but it was always warm, even the milk. The tower had a hum. Not from machinery. From itself. A frequency that sat just outside normal perception. You only noticed it when you stopped moving. It grew louder the longer you stayed still, until it became a pressure in your spine, a whisper against your skull, urging you to blink more slowly. The staff called it the hush. Some wore noise-canceling earpieces. I wasn't issued any. On my 3rd day, I saw something move behind the wall. The wall didn't have gaps, just smooth, uniform paneling. But something shifted behind it. Slowly, rhythmically, like breath. I turned to tell someone, but no one was there. Later, I checked the tower's schematics. The wall in question didn't exist. According to the tablet, that hallway was a dead end. But I'd walked it. Twice. I stopped asking questions. That night, I dreamed of the tower from below. Not underwater. Beneath something deeper. The base of the tower wasn't anchored to the sea floor. It was growing out of a mass. Something alive. Something folded. Something with eyes that didn't open but watched anyway. When I woke, I had salt on my pillow. My ears were ringing. Not with pressure, with static. A tone played softly from the tablet. 17 Hz. Sub-audible. But I felt it. I pressed the screen. The tablet flashed a message. Tone recognized. Level integration, stage 1. It vanished before I could screenshot it. I checked the hallway. The lights had dimmed. The walls vibrated. And someone had drawn a spiral in chalk on the floor outside my door. When I bent down to touch it, the lights flickered. I blinked. The spiral was gone. That morning, the staff acted as if nothing had happened. But when I passed the main control console, the camera nearest me swiveled to follow my movements. It shouldn't have. It was mounted statically. At 03:17 that night, the elevator moved on its own. I heard it rising, floor by floor. Each ding louder than the last. No one exited. No one called it. But when it reached my level, it stopped, and the doors opened. Inside, a mirror. Just one. Positioned perfectly, facing outward. It reflected the hallway, but not me. Only the spiral. Drawn in blood now, not chalk. The doors closed, and the elevator descended again. I didn't sleep that night, and I haven't since, because the tower isn't just here. It's listening, and the spiral isn't drawn. It's remembered. I started keeping notes. Not that it matters. Every morning, half of them are gone, rewritten, or replaced with symbols I don't remember knowing. Still, I write. The tower changes when you stop paying attention. That's the trick. You must observe it constantly, or it rewrites the room you're standing in while you're blinking. It began with the elevators. There are 5, at least by the original schematic. I've ridden 6. One of them doesn't have a floor indicator. It just descends. I made the mistake of stepping into it on my 4th day, thinking it was the usual line to level 7. The doors closed behind me and the lights cut out. I felt the descent immediately. Not mechanical, not smooth, but slow, like being lowered through syrup. I counted out the seconds, trying to track how long I'd been moving, and made it to 92 before the doors opened again. I was in the same hallway. Or so I thought. Everything looked identical. The same gray paneling, same soft hum in the floor, same flickering lights. But the hum had changed tone. Just slightly, half a step lower. Enough to make the space feel heavier. The hallway was longer than it had been. I walked it 3 times and never hit the corner. The fluorescent panels above me started to distort, bending gently, as if viewed underwater. When I turned back to the elevator, it was gone. Only wall. Seamless. No sign it had ever been there. I walked for what felt like an hour, maybe longer, before I found stairs. The numbering on the stairwell read L19. My clearance stopped at level 9. There is no level 19. I descended. Not out of curiosity. Out of necessity. The air on that floor had begun to shimmer, and I was beginning to hear breathing that didn't belong to me. The kind of breathing that mimicked yours. A half-second behind. Like it was practicing. The stairs led me back to level 8. A maintenance corridor. I emerged into a hallway I recognized, half-welcomed by the flicker of the vending machine near Storage Room Delta. No one asked why I had missed lunch rotation. No one noticed the bruise on my forearm in the shape of an open eye. Architecture isn't passive here. It responds. Stairs sometimes take you higher than they should. Rooms are smaller on the inside. Hallways stretch when you're alone. And always, always, the spiral returns, carved into corners, hidden in drain grates, reflected in puddles that shouldn't be there. A week later, I found the window. We're told there are no windows on the tower. I believed that, until the corridor between the comms hub and Sector 5's archive room shifted slightly to the left. That's how it happens. You walk the same hallway for the 100th time, and on the 101st there's a bend in the wall you could swear wasn't there. The window was square, tinted, about shoulder height. It had no frame. It showed an ocean that wasn't ours. Black, unmoving, reflecting stars I didn't recognize. They pulsed gently in the sky, forming shapes, geometries too precise to be constellations. One of them blinked, not twinkled. Blinked, like a pupil reacting to sudden light. I stood there too long. When I finally looked away, the hallway had changed again. Shorter. Closer. The ceiling was lower by a full meter. The hum in the floor had deepened, and I could feel it now, in my jaw. Like my teeth were vibrating in tune with the spiral etched on the inside of my skull. I found my way back. I always do. At least, I think I do. The tower seems content to let me return, so far. But the others, I'm starting to notice them less. Faces are blurring. Not in memory, in real time. The engineer on level 6, brown hair, thin-rimmed glasses, spoke to me every morning for a week. Today, his face was a smudge, still human, still present, but like someone had taken an eraser to the fine details. I asked about it. He smiled too wide and said, "The tower keeps only what it needs." That's when I realized he didn't blink once during our conversation. Later, in the mess hall, I tested a theory. I moved a chair 3 inches out of place before the 1300 lunch rotation. Then I sat nearby and waited. 13 people entered. None noticed. On the 14th person's arrival, the lights flickered. The hum stopped for 0.3 seconds. The chair was back in place. And everyone froze at once, just for a moment. Like a single frame had been cut from reality. Then they resumed eating. Some things aren't allowed to change. The mess hall is always exactly 19 chairs. The same meal every day. A different label, sure, but the taste is the same. The same steam pattern rises off each plate. I once switched 2 trays. The person who received mine looked at the wall for 5 full minutes, then began crying without sound. That night, I found a new door on level 9. It was small, oval, seamless, no keypad, but it was breathing. Every 6 seconds, it expanded and contracted, just enough to see the metal warp slightly. I placed my hand on it. It was warm. It whispered. A word I didn't know how to spell, but one I understood. The translation in my head came out as, "You are being translated." I pulled my hand back. The door vanished. No hiss, no flash, no transition. Just not there anymore. I returned to my quarters and found my bed had moved. Only 5 inches. But that was enough. Enough for the dream that night to happen. The dream of the tower inside a body. Not built, not anchored, but grown from ribs that arched into the sky. Each floor was a memory. Each staircase a throat. And somewhere in its center, behind walls that pulsed like ventricles, the spiral was carved into living bone. It opened its eye and said my name. When I woke up, my ID badge had changed. Not visually, not physically, functionally. It now granted me access to level 10. A floor I wasn't cleared for. A floor that doesn't exist on the schematics. I haven't used it yet, but the elevator lights flicker whenever I think about it. And the last time I passed the mirrorless hallway near Sector 3, I saw my reflection anyway. Smiling, blinking out of sync, whispering in a voice I haven't learned to use yet. It said, "Architecture is only a suggestion now." I first noticed it on my second day, but no one talks about it. The elevator panel has a button for the 23rd floor, sitting quietly between 22 and 24, glowing the same dull orange as all the others. But I never saw it pressed. No one ever mentioned it during rotation briefings, and the logs on my tablet listed it as floor inactive, no access required, which meant only one thing in a place like this. Don't ask. So I didn't. Not at first. But the tower has a way of pressing back when you leave questions unanswered. It began with the time lag. I was returning from the records room when I passed the corridor to the secondary elevator shaft. A man walked by me. Nothing unusual, gray vest, ID badge I couldn't quite read. But the sound of his footsteps trailed behind him with a half-second delay. Not an echo. Not acoustics. The actual sound arrived after he was already 10 feet ahead. It happened again 2 days later. I dropped a metal tray in the mess hall. It hit the floor. And for 2 heartbeats, silence. Then the sound arrived, like the tower was buffering reality before it let it through. Everyone froze when it happened. Some looked up. One of them, the same smudged-faced technician, shook his head slowly and whispered, "Someone's been using the 23rd. I turned. "What's on that floor?" He didn't blink. He just said, "Nothing. Yet." That night, I decided to ride the elevator alone. I waited until 3rd cycle, Oro 300, when the halls were mostly empty. I scanned my badge, and to my surprise, the elevator accepted it. No warning, no override. The 23rd button lit up when I pressed it, but the elevator didn't move, not immediately. The lights flickered. The hum beneath my feet shifted to a deeper resonance, like the tower was holding its breath. Then it descended. Not with the smooth hydraulic whisper I'd grown used to, but a dragging motion, like something was pulling it down manually. When the doors opened, I didn't step out right away. The hallway was dark. Not unlit. Dark. Like the walls had absorbed every lumen. The air had weight, not just pressure. Weight, like breathing through wet cloth. My ears popped twice. The corridor stretched ahead in both directions. Longer than it should have been. I counted 17 ceiling lights, but only 3 were lit, and even those flickered like dying lanterns. The walls were covered in a matte material that didn't reflect light or sound. I took 1 step forward, and the elevator behind me closed. No ding, no warning. I turned back and pressed the call button. It was dead. The panel was cold to the touch. That's when I noticed the air didn't move. Not even the faint hiss of circulation. Nothing. Total stillness. There were doors along the corridor. Heavy steel. Windowless. Each with a number stenciled in black. 2301, 2302, 2303. Continuing down until the last I could see. 2313. I tried the first. Locked. The second. Locked. But the third was ajar. It opened half an inch when I touched it, revealing a narrow room lined with observation glass. Inside, a chair, restraints, a speaker mounted on the wall facing the chair, and a window on the far side, behind which I saw my own face, blinking. I stepped back immediately. The face didn't move, didn't mimic. It just stared, unmoving, unblinking. A light above the chair in the room clicked on. From the speaker, a voice. My voice, not a recording, not a mimic. My voice, saying something I didn't understand. Not a language, not a phrase. Just tone, cadence, the shape of command without content. The face on the far wall opened its mouth and began to speak along with the sound, as if obeying it. I slammed the door shut, turned and walked faster now. The corridor seemed longer. The lights behind me dimmed with each step I took, as though the floor itself was retreating into memory. I reached the elevator just as it opened. I didn't press the button. It opened by itself. I stepped inside. The moment I did, I felt it. Not something watching me, something recording me, as if every breath I took was being converted into a format it could study later. The doors closed, and I descended. I didn't go up. I went down, past 22, past 21, into nothing. For a moment, the panel was blank. Then it showed. 23B, observation hold. The doors opened again. I didn't move. I couldn't. The chamber in front of me was empty, perfectly empty. No walls. No ceiling. Just a black void, endless in all directions. Except in the center, a single floating screen, projecting my personnel file. But it wasn't current. It was projected for a date 6 weeks from now. And it listed me as status terminated. Linguistic inversion. Phase 3. I reached to touch the screen. It blinked away. The void retracted like lungs exhaling. And then I was in the elevator again. The doors closed. The panel now read Level 7. Had I ever left? Was the descent real? Back in my quarters, my tablet had a notification. An audio clip. Just 17 seconds long. I played it. It was my voice. Whispering something over and over. Only 3 words. I know this because I played it backward, reversed, slowed, translated into text. The message was, "Don't follow me." Underneath the clip, a timestamp for the recording, dated 2 days from now. After that, I started seeing door 2303 in my dreams. And the face behind the glass isn't just watching anymore. It's waiting for me to say something first. It started with a woman I could never quite catch up to. I'd seen her 3 times over the course of 2 weeks. Always in the hallway between Level 6's magnetic archive and the auxiliary comms hub. She walked quickly, hair tied back in a precise knot, her shoes tapping in a metronomic rhythm against the polished tile. Every time I followed her, she turned the corner just ahead of me. And every time I reached that corner, the hallway was empty. Dead ends. No doors. No trace of motion. Only the faint smell of ozone. And once, a lingering smear on the wall, like something had leaned too hard against the structure and left behind part of itself. The staff doesn't speak about her, or him, or them, because as the days stretched on, more began to appear. Not out of thin air, not like ghosts, but like old files being pulled back from a corrupted drive. Familiar outlines with details missing. You'd see someone pass you with a clipboard, but you couldn't remember if they had eyes. You'd walk past a technician hunched over a terminal, and only notice after the fact that they never moved, never typed, just stared into a black screen as if waiting for it to blink first. I made a list. Names I heard, faces I remembered, descriptions. I cross-checked them with the tower's personnel registry. The list had 212 names. The registry only listed 94 active staff. I ran the search again. It returned a different result, 87. I tried printing the list. The tablet shut down and didn't restart for 6 hours. That night, someone knocked on my door at exactly 03:17. One knock. I didn't answer. They didn't leave. I pressed my ear to the metal. There was no breathing, but I heard typing. Slow, deliberate, as if they were standing just outside my room, typing something onto a keyboard I couldn't see. Then a whisper. Not audible through the door. Inside my room, it said, "You left me behind." I turned the lights on and didn't sleep. The next morning the staff was thinner. I didn't recognize half the faces in the mess hall. No one looked up. No one made eye contact. I sat down and noticed someone had already written something on my napkin in pencil. 5 words. They don't cast shadows anymore. I looked around. They were right. I stood slowly and moved toward one of the newer faces. A woman, maybe mid-30s, pale skin, jet black hair. She smiled when she saw me. Wide. Too wide. Her name badge was blank. I asked, "Which floor are you posted to?" She didn't answer, just tilted her head and whispered something I couldn't hear. I leaned closer, and she said, in my voice, "You shouldn't remember me." I backed away. She smiled again and returned to her food, though I never saw her use her fork. The tray in front of her remained untouched. I returned to my quarters. There was a new file waiting on my terminal. No sender, no subject, just an audio clip. I played it. Faint static. Then my voice. Not now me. Future me. I could hear it in the cadence. Slower, worn, slightly hoarse, like it had been speaking too long without rest. The voice said, "They walk between blinks. They don't need clearance because they remember how the tower was built. Don't follow them. Don't let them learn your name. If you forget them, they forget you. But if you name them, they stay." I deleted the file, but my computer kept playing it every 7 minutes, even without power. I filed an incident report. No response. Instead, my access badge was downgraded. It now read, "Limited observation, category Echo." Later that evening, I saw a man in the hallway outside Level 9's restricted elevator. He was whispering something into the seam of the door, like talking to a pet behind glass. He turned as I approached. His mouth didn't move, but I heard a phrase vibrate directly in my skull. I never left. He wasn't in uniform. He wasn't barefoot either. He had no feet at all, just the faint shadow of them trailing slightly behind his legs, disconnected, delayed like an animation error. I ran. The hallway stretched the faster I moved, until I realized I was back in the same place I had started, standing in front of the man again. But now he wasn't alone. A second version of him stood beside him. Same face, same suit, same delay. But this one was facing the wall, whispering something over and over again. "Name me. Name me. Name me." I turned away. I whispered my own name as a kind of tether, and the hallway snapped back into shape. I returned to my quarters to find the word "Remember" written in dust on the wall above my bed. But my quarters had been vacuum sealed just 2 hours earlier. No dust should exist. The tablet had a new notification. An image. It was a photo of the Level 23 corridor, taken from a downward angle, as if shot by something crawling on the ceiling, and in the center of the frame, me, walking beside someone I couldn't see. Their arm was around my shoulder. My shadow was missing, but theirs stretched down the hallway like a slick. And at the very end of that shadow, in a circle of darkness just beyond the reach of the emergency lights, a spiral had been drawn. Inside it, a single word. Soon. I blinked. The image vanished. The tablet powered down. And somewhere in the back of my skull, I felt someone else blink too. Not in surprise. In recognition. The tower doesn't have a top floor, not officially. The schematics end at Level 27, but there's a staircase above 27B. Narrow, unmarked. It coils upward like a vertebrae made of metal. I'd only seen it once, weeks ago, during an equipment run to repair a server node that had begun speaking in Base 3 sequences. The stairwell had been locked then, sealed with a biometric plate that didn't match any issued ID. Yesterday, it was open. No warning, no change in clearance, no message. Just open. And waiting. I stood at the base of the steps for several minutes, hand on the rail, listening. No sounds from above, but the air was warmer than the rest of the tower, humid, almost electrical. Like walking into the moment just before a thunderstorm. I should have reported it, should have logged it, should have turned back. But I didn't. I climbed. Each step creaked in a way no other surface in the tower ever had. The tower is precise, calibrated, lifelessly efficient, until you reach those stairs. There was a kind of hesitation in each metal plate, as though it were deciding whether to hold your weight. I climbed 37 steps before reaching a landing. A door, no number. Just a steel frame with a pane of smoked glass in the center. The glass didn't reflect. It absorbed. I pressed it open. Inside, a room I was never meant to see. The command room. I don't know what I expected. Monitors, controls, rows of analysts mumbling codes into earpieces. But there were no people, no chairs. Just a massive circular table in the center of the room, made from what looked like fused glass and carbon, smooth and black as oil. Embedded in its surface, hundreds of small lights, some blinking, some pulsing in slow rhythms that didn't match any regular timing sequence. The walls were screens, every single one. But they didn't display the tower. They displayed other places, or possibly other times. In one, a forest burned without smoke. In another, a city submerged in slow, rippling water. I saw a desert that blinked. Literally blinked, as if the sand itself had eyelids. In the upper left screen, I saw a view of a hallway I recognized. Level 9, right outside my room. I wasn't there, but someone else was. They looked like me, but slightly taller. And they weren't moving. They were just standing, staring at the camera as if they knew it was being watched. The screen next to it flickered. It showed my quarters again, but this time the bed was empty, the sheets wet. The timestamp on the feed was 2 days from now. I looked around the room. There were no switches, no labels. The table wasn't connected to any visible power source. And yet, it hummed. An undertone I felt in the bridge of my nose and beneath my fingernails. I leaned in. The table responded. A ripple passed across its surface, forming a circle, a spiral. Words appeared in the center, not printed, formed, as though the surface was folding language into shape. 3 lines. You are being observed. You have been selected. Speech is the trigger. I backed away. And that's when the lights changed. All at once the room darkened. Only the spiral remained lit. Then a voice spoke. Not from the speakers, from everywhere, including inside me. Echo present. Harmonic alignment stable. Awaiting prompt. I swallowed. Prompt? I whispered. The lights brightened again. The screens changed. Every single one now showed me. Dozens of me. In uniforms I'd never worn. In towers I'd never entered. One was sitting in a chair I'd never seen before, mouth open in mid-scream. Another walked in a corridor of mirrors, his reflection staring back with spiral eyes. Another was kneeling, whispering to someone just out of frame. I stepped back, heart hammering. The spiral on the table spun faster. Words formed again. Observation is not neutral. You have already spoken. The tower listens back. The air changed, grew dense. The room seemed to tilt inward, like a throat preparing to swallow. And then the table went dark. Every screen turned to static. A single tone rang out, thin, metallic, wrong. Not a frequency. A scream in slow motion, drawn out over 30 seconds, not loud, but absolute. It felt like being filled with liquid thought. And then silence. The lights returned. The door opened behind me. The stairwell was there again, waiting. I didn't remember walking back to my room. I only remember waking up. The tablet was on. New message. A single line. You saw what speaks through us. Below it, a recording file. I played it. My voice. Not from today. From a day that hasn't happened yet. I tried to warn them. But every time I opened my mouth, the spiral got bigger. The more I explained, the more it grew. Now it's in everything. The words echo backward. I dream in transcripts. Silence. Then my voice again. This time, whispering. You can't control it by studying it. You control it by forgetting its name. I closed the file. Looked up. Someone had scratched something into the wall above my desk while I slept. It wasn't deep, but it was exact. Perfect. A circle. Inside it, a symbol like an eye, but reversed. Iris facing inward. Under it, in barely visible script, command accepted. I touched it. And for a second, just a second, I heard every conversation ever held in the tower playing at once. Laughter, screams, warnings, whispers, and one word repeated over and over. Soon. I turned off the lights and waited. Because now, I think I understand. The command room isn't for giving orders. It's for receiving them. The tower hums. Always. Like a cathedral trying to sing in a language no one was meant to learn. The sound isn't mechanical. It isn't generated. It just is. A pressure behind your teeth. A slow warping of equilibrium that you stop noticing only after your body has adjusted to it. But recently, something has changed. It started on the 6th night after I entered the command room. I was lying awake, eyes open, not sleeping, not dreaming, when my ears popped, like a sudden shift in cabin pressure. The room fell into stillness. The normal ambient whir of the ventilation system cut out, replaced by a low, dragging static. Then my terminal flickered once, despite being powered off. I reached toward it, but stopped. Because the static was speaking. It wasn't garbled, it was layered. A dozen voices whispering in synchronization, reciting the same thing in different accents, different tempos. All of them perfectly timed to pulse with the lights, just faintly enough to notice. I couldn't make out the words, but my body recognized the cadence. It felt like being scolded by your own blood. I snapped the terminal's power off completely. The static persisted. I opened the panel on the wall and pulled the fuse. Still, the voices continued. Only after I unplugged the data port at the base of the terminal, something we're explicitly told never to do, did the sound stop. Instantly. As if someone had just placed a finger on a spinning record. The silence that followed wasn't silence. It was anticipation. As though the tower had noticed me listening. The next day, the staff was quieter than usual. I mean that in the strictest sense. No one spoke above a whisper. Even those who usually grunted hellos during corridor crossings looked at the floor, lips sealed. I entered the comms room around 1100 hours. 5 operators sat at their terminals, listening through headsets, eyes red and unfocused. One was softly repeating the word, submerge, over and over. Another was scratching tally marks into the skin of his thigh beneath the desk. The lead technician, an older man named Rains, turned to me with a strange, slow-motion stiffness. "You hear it?" he asked. I nodded. "The signal's growing. It's no longer bouncing off the relay grid. It's choosing entry points." "Where's it coming from?" I asked. He gave me a look that didn't belong to him. The kind of look you give when a memory returns, but you're not the one who lived it. "It's not coming," he said. "It's returning." Then he lifted his headset and handed it to me. "Listen." I didn't want to, but I did. At first, it was just static, harmless. White noise filtered through analog distortion. Then the pitch shifted. I heard breathing, wet, labored, familiar. Then a word. My name, not spoken. Echoed. Like someone had recorded me saying it, then played it back through a mouth that had forgotten how to form syllables. The static deepened. A pattern emerged. 4 tones, low, lower. Pause, then high. Repeated. I recognized the sequence. It matched the tonal fluctuations from the command room, only now slowed, stretched into something that carried intent. The headset grew warm against my skin. My gums ached. My eyes watered. I handed it back. Rains smiled sadly. "It knows you now." He turned back to his monitor. On the screen, a waveform that shouldn't exist. A fractal spiral, rotating with every beat of the incoming signal. "Do we know what it's transmitting?" I asked. "No. But it's not human." "How can you tell?" "Because it doesn't repeat itself. It evolves." I returned to my room. My terminal was on. playing the same four-tone sequence I'd just heard. No speakers, no audio file, just the screen pulsing with white and black in sync with the sound. My keyboard was gone. In its place, a small metal plate etched with a single sentence in block letters. Do not reply. I covered the plate with a towel and shut off the screen. At 03:17 the lights flickered. The signal returned. But this time, it played through the walls. The metal hummed in harmony with the tones, vibrating in sync with my heartbeat. I felt my chest tighten. I heard water running, though none existed in my room. My mouth tasted of copper and electricity. I recorded 30 seconds of the signal on a portable drive. The next morning, the drive was gone. In its place, a strip of reel tape folded twice and sealed in wax. I found a deck in the abandoned AV lab on level 11, played the tape, the same tones, but with something layered beneath. A voice. Not mine. Not anyone I knew. It was speaking backwards. I reversed the file. It said, "The sentence is almost complete. The speaker is preparing to remember itself." I stopped the tape. The lights in the lab went out. My watch beeped once. 3:17. I ran. When I returned to my room, my bed had been turned. Not shifted. Turned. Like the room's axis had rotated and the furniture obeyed. On the wall above the bed, the four tones were now scratched into the surface, but not in metal, in bone. Someone, or something, had embedded strips of calcified material into the wall, arranged like musical notation, perfectly spaced. Underneath, another sentence. Say it back and become. I left the room. Slept in the comms hallway with the others. We didn't speak. No one sleeps anymore. We wait for the signal. We feel it coming closer. And last night, I realized something else. The four tones? They match the heartbeat I've been hearing in my own ears. They've always matched, which means it's not just speaking, it's syncing. And when it finishes the phrase, it won't be through the walls. It'll be through me. The elevators in the tower have always behaved oddly, but we stopped questioning them long ago. They move on their own sometimes, doors opening onto empty hallways or levels sealed in the floor plan. At least once a week, an elevator arrives at a floor no one called, its interior empty and dry, until one day, it wasn't. It happened during third shift. I had just finished reviewing the corrupted relay logs in Maintenance 6B, another incident where the transcribed data came through as written screams. The lights had dimmed twice, but that had become standard. The tower dims when it digests something. I was waiting on the elevator to take me back to level 7 when the panel pinged. No one had called it, but the cab arrived regardless. The doors opened, and it was red, not painted, not rusted, slick, fresh, coated. The entire interior was smeared in blood, floor to ceiling. It glistened under the recessed lights as if the metal had sweated crimson. The panel still glowed. The buttons were illuminated, clean, untouched. I stepped back, my mouth dry. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle, no scent of decay, just blood. Not dripping, not pooled, just there. Applied. Intentionally. Someone had turned the elevator into a sigil. I should have radioed it in, but my comm crackled with distortion the moment I reached for it. Instead, I tapped into the service panel. The elevator had made an unscheduled stop at B6 20 minutes earlier. There is no B6 in the tower. We don't go below B3. The rest is sealed off, redacted, buried. The cameras inside the cab, each one routed to the tower's central feed, had been overridden. The last image available was static, frozen at 03:17 with the timestamp blinking in red. Nothing else. I watched the doors begin to close. I should have let them. Should have sent the elevator on its way. But something caught my eye. Just as the gap narrowed, a sound, a soft wet click, from inside the blood-slicked cab. Not machinery, not error. A footstep. I reached out, stopped the doors, and inside, on the floor now clearly visible in the gap between my boots and the edge of the cab, a note. Soaked, wrinkled, folded 4 times. I used forceps to pick it up, dried it on the vent in the lab. It took 2 hours to fully open without tearing. The message inside was handwritten. Black ink, careful script, unshaking. One line. You don't bleed here unless it wants to know you better. On the back, a fingerprint in red. I ran it through the internal database. No match. But the system flagged it as Priority Repeater. I'd never seen that designation before. I submitted a request for clarification. The terminal shut down, fused internally. The screen shattered without warning. I found a smear of red on the floor near my cot later that night. Not a spill, a print of something with 5 fingers, and a 6th, smaller one just beneath the others, like a remnant of a hand that had started to become something else. I didn't sleep. The elevator returned the next night. Same one, same coding. But this time, the doors didn't open fully, only halfway. Just enough to see the new addition. In the center of the cab's ceiling, a mirror had been installed. Not standard, perfectly round, clean. It reflected the floor of the elevator back toward the viewer, anyone standing outside. But it didn't reflect me, only the blood, and something crouched in the corner that wasn't there when I looked directly. I blinked. It moved, slowly, like a mantis preparing to strike. I stared hard. Still no one inside, only the reflection showing otherwise. I backed away. The doors closed. There was a new sound, from the shaft itself, a low, rhythmic thudding, like someone was climbing the cables inside the walls. But not up. Down. I traced the signal from the elevator to the master panel. It logged 3 unauthorized stops. B6, then B7. Then, beneath. Not a level. A label. After that, the logs ended. Corrupted. All entry fields replaced with the phrase, Transit complete. Vessel learning. Rains found me 2 hours later in the lower comms sector. He looked thinner, like someone had erased some of his volume. His skin seemed too tight on his bones. He handed me an envelope. Found this in the printer, he said. It was addressed to you. There was no sender. Just the spiral, sketched in ballpoint pen. Inside, a photo. Grainy. From a camera I didn't recognize. It showed me, standing in front of the blood elevator, but not looking in. Looking out. From inside the cab. Expression blank. Eyes wide. Hands pressed against the door like glass. And behind me, on the mirror, a symbol scratched into the silver surface. The spiral. Reversed. Curled inward. I turned the photo over. On the back. Next time, it won't stop at your floor. That night, the elevator called itself to my level. Doors opening. Blood gone. Spotless. As if it had never happened. A single object lay on the floor. My badge. But I hadn't lost it. Mine was still clipped to my chest. I picked it up. It scanned as valid. But the name on it was different. My name. But reversed. Every letter backward. Like a mirror version of me had registered before I arrived. I filed a report. System error. No response. I tried to forget. But the next morning when I woke, the badge was gone from my table. And in its place, a message burned into the metal surface of my desk. Blood is the tower's ink. It writes what you forget. I stared at it for hours. I don't take the elevators anymore. I climb the stairs. Always. Even when my legs tremble. Even when my lungs hurt. Because I know the elevator still watches. It waits. And one night, when I'm too tired to resist, it'll open again. But next time, it won't be blood on the walls. It'll be mine. The tower has a rhythm to its madness. A pulse hidden in systems, in procedures. We adapt. We obey. But there are things we're not meant to understand. And those things wear protocol numbers instead of names. Protocol 44 was never discussed openly. I'd seen it referenced only once before. Buried in the metadata of a corrupted log file from Sector 12. It was associated with 3 things: full lockdown, restricted language, and visual suppression. I didn't know what any of that meant until the alarm started. It happened during 4th shift, 0241. I was in the auxiliary sensor lab reviewing yet another inconclusive spectral analysis. A shadow had been cast on level 4 that didn't have a source. Every 20 minutes, it returned. Identical shape, identical movement. The shadow turned corners without attached feet. Then the lights went red, not blinking. Burning. Every floor panel emitted the same red tone. Then came the chime. 5 tones in a sequence none of us had heard before. The tablet on my desk buzzed once and displayed a message in full-screen override. Protocol 44 initiated. Observe silence. Do not interpret. Lock all doors. Eye contact is prohibited. That was all. No context, just cold instruction. The locks slid shut on their own. The vents stopped circulating. The hum that never ceased in the tower, the one we had all grown used to like a second heartbeat, cut off. There was no noise at all. Just stillness. Then the lights dimmed, not uniformly, but strategically, in sections, like a ripple crawling along the nervous system of the building. I checked the hallway through the one-way observation slit in the lab. All the doors were closed, except one. Mine. It never shut. I tried the manual override. Nothing. I whispered the access code. Nothing. The hallway light flickered once, and something moved, just past the second bulkhead. Slow, upright, humanoid only in suggestion. Its proportions were off. Arms too long, neck too still. The motion was jerky, but not chaotic. Like it was simulating walking, but didn't understand the muscles. I closed the slit, backed away, pressed myself against the far wall and waited. It passed. Didn't enter. Didn't pause. Just continued down the hall, and with it, I felt something being pulled from the room. Meaning, or weight, or sound. The silence it left behind was heavy, artificial, like air that had been pressed through teeth. That's when the monitor blinked. A new window opened. Unauthorized. It showed live surveillance of the tower's central security hub. A single frame, grainy and pulsing. A figure stood in the middle of the room. Back to the camera. Head tilted toward the ceiling. Its arms hung at its sides. Not relaxed, disconnected. The figure began to move. Slowly, like animation caught between frames. It turned to face the camera. And it had no face. Only mirrored skin, smooth as liquid chrome. Its entire head reflected the room around it. Except for one thing. Me. It reflected me. Even though I wasn't in the room, it saw me. It smiled. Not with lips. With intention. Then, the screen shattered. My ears bled. I didn't scream. Protocol 44 prohibits it. The lights went fully dark. My eyes adjusted, but only slightly. The tablet displayed a final message before shutting down. Protocol 44 was issued for you. I sat in the dark for 27 minutes before the red lights returned. But this time, they pulsed. Soft. Regular. As if breathing. The locks disengaged. Doors creaked open. The hum returned. Wrong. Shifted. Lower. Hungrier. The hallway was empty again. No sign of the figure. But the walls had changed. Each panel now bore an indentation, a shallow spiral, burned in from the inside. The edges were warm, and every time I blinked, they looked slightly deeper. I returned to my quarters. Everything had moved 4 inches to the left. Perfectly. Mechanically. The bed. The chair. The desk. Even the lights. As if the room had reassembled itself after being taken apart for inspection. There was a file on my pillow. A printed page. Red ink. Do not speak during the signal. Below it, a sequence of numbers. 44, 03, 17. I knew the pattern. Protocol 44, 03, 17. The hour of convergence. Below the sequence, a sentence. You were watched during silence. Your mouth remembers what your mind denies. I went to the mirrorless wall. There was now a mirror, just there, installed without bolts, seamless. It showed nothing but the room, no reflection, no me. But on the other side of the mirror, something stood. Not moving, just waiting. I blinked. The mirror was gone. But the outline of the thing remained in my vision, as if etched into the afterimage behind my eyelids. That night, I didn't leave my room. The tower moved beneath me. I felt it, rotating, unfolding, breathing in new dimensions I couldn't see. A hallway opened outside my quarters. I didn't step into it. I just listened. I heard footsteps, not shoes, not boots. Bare skin on metal. Then a whisper. Protocol 45 is a mouth. I didn't answer. I don't know what Protocol 45 is. But I think Protocol 44 was its invitation. And I think I opened it when I listened too closely. He sat in the same spot every day, third chair from the left in the mess hall's eastern row. Plate untouched. Hands folded neatly. always at exactly 12:17 p.m. No one spoke to him. No one asked why. I watched for 11 days before I said anything. I should have waited longer. On the 12th day, I arrived early. He was already there. Same posture, same uniform, same vacant stare. I brought my tray and sat across from him, careful not to interrupt the ritual. At precisely 12:17, he looked up, locked eyes with me, and said in a calm, hollow tone, "I've been here longer than the tower." He smiled, then lowered his gaze and said nothing else. The sentence repeated the next day. Same words, same inflection, same timestamp. The other staff ignored it. The ones who still showed signs of being real. Most didn't sit near him. Most didn't seem to register him at all. The AI facial log didn't either. My terminal kept flagging the camera footage from the mess hall as corrupted between 12:16 and 12:18 every day. Only static. But I saw him. Always. And he saw me. On day 14, I responded. "Who are you?" He blinked. Slowly. Like he was buffering the question. Then, still smiling, "I've been here longer than the tower." Word for word. Then silence again. On the 15th day, I didn't go. I took my lunch back in my quarters, ate in silence, avoided the third chair in the corner of my vision. At 12:17, my lights dimmed. The comms panel activated on its own, and his voice played through the speaker. "I've been here longer than the tower." I stood still, mouth dry, heart thudding. It wasn't a recording. He was speaking live. Somehow. From nowhere. On day 16, I returned. This time, 2 of him were there. Identical. Same uniform. Same badge. Same smile. One sat in the usual spot. The other was standing just behind him, facing away. When the clock struck 12:17, they spoke in unison. "I've been here longer than the tower." I rose from my seat and backed away. Nobody else reacted. Not a single glance. It was like their presence didn't register on anyone's consciousness but mine. On day 17, there were 3. One eating. One smiling. One writing something on the wall with his finger. There was no ink, no chalk. But when I passed by later, the phrase had burned itself into the paint. "The tower is catching up to me." I traced the wall with a thermal reader. The letters were still hot. When I touched them, a low tone rang through the structure. A chime. Exactly 4 seconds long. The same frequency I had once heard behind the elevator shaft. Before Protocol 44. That night, I accessed the tower's archived personnel files. Found nothing. No record of him. No facial recognition matches. But I did find a maintenance report dated March 17, 1952, referencing a repeating behavior anomaly. Subject displays consistent verbal loop during midday rationing. Unbroken for 41 consecutive rotations. Terminates interaction when approached. Subject believed to be residual. The tower wasn't built until 1961. I saved the file. The next morning, it was gone. Replaced with a single text string. "You weren't supposed to remember that." At 12:17, I entered the mess hall armed with a camcorder. Analog, not tower-linked. I sat, watched, waited. He arrived, alone again. Smiled, spoke. "I've been here longer than the tower." I filmed it, kept filming. When I played it back, no image, just static. But the sound was still there. Only it wasn't his voice. It was mine. Whispering the same line. My mouth hadn't moved. My voice hadn't spoken. But the tape showed it clearly. I was seated in his spot. Same uniform, same smile, eyes glassy. Voice slow. I stopped watching, burned the tape. The smell lingered for 3 days. On the 21st day, he didn't show up. Instead, a note on the table. "I've moved on. You're repeating now." That night, I awoke in bed. Sitting. Hands folded. Smiling. At 12:17 a.m., I whispered aloud, "I've been here longer than the tower." I didn't remember doing it. Didn't want to do it. But I said it. And when I looked into the mirror, still cracked from the Protocol 44 blackout, I saw him. Standing behind me. Not smiling now. Mouth slack. Eyes gone. Just spiral pits, slowly widening, as if waiting to pull something through. I turned. Nothing there. but the reflection lingered 5 seconds longer than my movement. I don't sleep anymore. I hear him pacing the hallway. 12 steps. Pause. 12 steps. Turn. Whisper. Repeat. I tried recording it on paper. Every attempt ends the same. Page 1. I've been here longer than the tower. Page 2. I've been here longer than the tower. By page 57, the letters start to curve inward, like they're trying to form a shape, like they want to speak back. I've stopped writing, because last night, at exactly 12:17, my reflection sat down before I did, smiled, and said, "I'm tired of repeating. It's your turn now." There is a level beneath the tower that doesn't appear on any schematic, not redacted, not blacked out, but simply absent. You could search 1,000 times and never see it. I found it by accident, or maybe it found me. Either way, the access shaft behind the old hydro-pressure corridor opened when it wasn't supposed to. The rusted grating peeled back like old skin, revealing a stairwell that smelled like mildew and ash. I took a flashlight, although part of me already knew the batteries would die the moment I crossed the threshold. They did, but the light didn't go out. It turned green, dim, cold, and steady, a kind of phosphorescence that clung to the walls, as though the stone itself was alive with bioluminescent memory. The staircase descended longer than any structure in the tower should allow. I counted the steps, lost count at 417. The air grew denser with each turn, and I felt the pressure in my sinuses deepen, like I was descending into an ocean trench without a suit. Finally, the stairs ended, into silence. The space below was vast and hollow, like the ribcage of a buried leviathan. The ceiling arched high above, disappearing into shadow, and across every inch of that curved bone-like surface, shelves, books, not files, not drives, actual books, tens of thousands, maybe more, some bound in leather, others in plastic or sealed in oily wrappings that shimmered like beetle shells. Some pulsed gently under my fingertips when I passed them, as if responding to proximity. There were no labels, no indices, but each book had a small tag sewn to its spine, a date, a name, and a designation. Some were Latin, others symbols I didn't recognize. Some had my name, more than one, each with different dates, none of which matched my birthday. I opened one. The pages were thin and damp, and the ink was alive, literally. It shifted when I looked at it. One sentence at a time, words rearranged themselves as I read, forming new sentences just as quickly as I tried to grasp the last. They formed a loop, a spiral of meaning that began and ended in the same place. "You are a version of something trying to forget," it was written. I put it back. The second book with my name was colder to the touch. Inside, a detailed transcript of events that hadn't happened yet. Conversations, decisions, regrets. The final page had a sketch. Me, staring into a mirror that wasn't mine. In the reflection, the same smile from the repeating man. I backed away. The shelves creaked softly, as if something unseen was walking down the rows. I moved deeper. At the far end of the chamber stood a terminal, unpowered, but not dead. A monolith of stone and steel with a screen embedded in its face, blank and silent. Above it, a phrase etched into the wall. "You must not read yourself." To its left, a row of drawers. I pulled one open. Inside, files. Paper, brittle and yellowed. Each stamped with a seal I'd seen only once before. On the access logs for the command room, buried under a top-secret directive marked Observer Null. Each file contained names, dates, time of death. A few were circled in red. I found Torres's name. Date of death, 2 weeks ago. But I'd spoken to him 3 days earlier. I flipped to the last page in his file. Written by hand. Returned to loop integrity. Spoken too soon. Rewritten mid-sequence. I closed the drawer. Opened another. Found my own file. The envelope was thinner than the others, almost blank, except for one sticky note on the inside flap. Still becoming. Don't interrupt him. The main sheet listed my status as undecided, pattern incomplete, file self-populating. I heard footsteps, far end of the shelves. Slow, measured, click, click, click. I ducked behind a column, peered out. Someone, or something, moved down the aisle. wearing my uniform, holding a book, reading it aloud, but no sound came out. Just breath. On every third step, it paused and stared directly at the row I was hiding behind, as if remembering something important. I waited, felt the floor pulse beneath me. A rhythm, heartbeat, no. Typing. Somewhere deep inside this place, words were being written. Fresh. In real time. My words. I rose slowly, turned to leave. But the staircase was gone, replaced by another shelf. This one had no books, only mirrors, dozens of them, each reflecting a version of me, standing still, looking back, unmoving. Each held a book in their hand, except one. One version of me held nothing, and it was smiling. I touched the mirror. The glass rippled, and I heard my own voice whispering from behind the surface, "Don't take the last page. You're not ready to end yet." I stumbled backward, turned. The books were glowing now, soft pulses in time with the tower above. A pulse of attention, recognition. A voice rang out from the shelves. Faint, dry, but clear. Not a threat, a warning. Everything you learn here adds a page to your ending. Read slowly. I ran, blindly. Felt the stone underfoot shift and turn like moving parts in a great machine. Eventually, I found a hatch, unmarked, sealed. But when I placed my hand on it, it opened. I crawled through and emerged in the waste filtration corridor on level 3. My uniform was damp. The soles of my boots were burned. In my pocket, a single page. I don't remember taking it. It was blank, until I blinked. Then, slowly, one line wrote itself. "When you are erased, this will be the only part of you left." I've hidden the page, burned the rest of my notes, and stopped saying my name aloud. Because now, I understand. The library isn't an archive. It's a womb, and the tower is still writing us. We were never supposed to have mirrors. From the beginning, the guidelines were clear. No reflective surfaces beyond regulated lenses. Even the cameras in the tower were lined with anti-reflective shielding. The rationale, we were told, was practical. No distractions, no vanities, no contamination of observation. But it was more than that. It always is. The first mirror appeared in my quarters after Protocol 44. Seamless. Flush with the wall where I'd scraped tracking codes the night before. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Some accidental installation by a crew I had never seen. But the mirror had no edge, no screws, no backlight. It was simply there, as if it had always been there and I had only just earned the right, or curse, to perceive it. It reflected the room perfectly. Except me. Where I should have stood. Nothing. No silhouette. No shadow. Just the room. Empty. I moved left. The image moved. But slowly. As if the reflection lagged by fractions of a second. I leaned forward. The lights flickered. My eyes adjusted. And for the briefest instant, I saw myself. Not mirrored. Not opposite. But inverted. Something about the expression was wrong. Not angry. Not alien. Just confident. A version of me that already knew how the story ended. When I blinked, he didn't. I turned away. The next day, a second mirror appeared, this time in the corridor leading to the main archive. Identical design, seamless, dead center on the wall that used to house a pressure panel. Gone now. As if the structure had rewritten itself to accommodate a new requirement. Others began noticing, or pretending not to. One technician, Shay, refused to speak after catching sight of his reflection. He stood still for 6 hours, pupils fully dilated, lips slightly parted. When they pulled him away, he whispered a single phrase. It looked at me before I looked at it. He was relocated to level R and never seen again. I stopped counting how many mirrors appeared. They were everywhere now. The mess hall, the stairwells, inside lockers that used to store uniforms. They weren't always visible. Some only showed themselves when approached from a certain angle. Others pulsed faintly, revealing themselves only in peripheral vision. And every single one had the same feature. A spiral in the corner. Faint, almost imperceptible. But there, drawn in condensation, etched in dust, or revealed briefly under the right frequency of light. We tried covering them. Didn't work. Cloth fell away. Tape peeled off. Glass cracked, but never broke. And if you looked away after trying to block the surface, You'd find the room rearranged, just slightly, like punishment. I began recording each mirror I saw. Not on paper, on skin. Each time I passed one, I added a small mark to the underside of my forearm. By the end of the week, I had 34. On the 8th day, I woke up with a 35th mark already drawn. Fresh. Still red. But I hadn't passed any new mirrors the day before. At least, I hadn't thought I had. That morning, a new notice appeared on the terminal rotation logs. Mirror events now classified under Code Reflex. Do not engage. Observe neutrally. File reports only if contact is initiated from the opposite side. We all read it. We all pretended not to understand, but we did. We all had seen something move first. Something smile first. One of the biologists in Sector 4 shattered their coffee cup when they caught a glimpse of their reflection writing on a notepad before their own hand moved. They tore their uniform off in the hallway, screaming that their bones didn't belong to them anymore. They were sedated, never returned. The mirrors don't just reflect. They edit. They present options, versions. Sometimes I stand in front of one for hours, watching the me on the other side blink out of sync, breathe faster, nod at jokes I haven't told. Once, it raised its hand, pressed a palm against the glass. I didn't move. It smiled. Not as mimicry, not as mockery, as a greeting, like it was waiting for me to return. Another time, I caught it writing in reverse against the surface. You're catching up. I'm starting to remember being you. The words disappeared when I blinked, but the meaning stayed. Last night, I dreamed I was behind the mirror, watching me sleep, not in a menacing way, almost protective. The dream me reached out, touched the edge of the glass, and said, "Stay still. If you move too quickly, the reflection won't hold." I woke to find the real mirror had shifted 6 inches to the left, but the wall it had been on was unchanged, as if the mirror hadn't moved. The room had. I requested a transfer. Denied. No reason given. That night, all the mirrors pulsed in unison for 13 seconds. I don't know how I know that, but I do. 13 seconds of subtle light, like breathing in a language only the tower understands. Then silence. Then stillness. Then the faint sound of laughter from somewhere deep below. I know what the mirrors are now. They're receivers. Not just for images, for choices, for realignments of self. Each one a checkpoint between the person I was and the person I'm becoming, or being replaced by. And this morning, I found a message carved into the wall beside the original mirror. Not in English, not in any language I can identify, but I understood it. A visceral, psychic translation burned into my nerves. It said, "When your reflection begins to speak without you, your body is ready." I haven't looked in a mirror since, but I've seen things watching me from inside them, and one of them isn't smiling anymore. It's hungry. They arrived at 0444. 3 of them. No warning, no entry logs, no pre-cleared credentials. The helipad never lit up. The tower simply powered down for 11 seconds, went silent, truly silent, and when the systems returned, they were already standing in the central corridor outside the transit lift. They weren't wet, their clothes had no wrinkles, and none of them spoke. We were told nothing. No alert was issued, no intercom chime. But every staff member stopped what they were doing when they appeared. Not in response to a signal, because there wasn't one. We just knew. I was on level 6, walking toward the communications core, when the hallway dimmed. The lights didn't flicker. They just darkened, as if the photons themselves were pulling away from the air. My skin went cold. My footsteps softened, muffled as though the floor was no longer interested in acknowledging my weight. Then I saw them. They passed the far end of the corridor. 3 figures. All in matching gray formal suits, perfectly pressed, with black ties and silver pins in the shape of a spiral. Open and uncoiling, unlike the one etched into the tower walls. Their faces were not blurred, not hidden, but unclaimed, like mannequins with just enough detail to qualify as human. Eyes too round. Lips unmoving. Pale, thin hands gloveless and pristine. And not a single one of them cast a shadow. Not on the floor. Not on the walls. Not even when backlit by the emergency beacon strobes that activated for 3 seconds as they passed through an airlock. They made no sound. No footfalls. No breathing. Only pressure. Presence. A feeling of language held in suspension. I tried to follow them. I shouldn't have. Every hallway I turned down felt longer than the last. The air grew syrupy, thick. My throat tightened, and my vision blurred around the edges, as if my perception was being pressed through some kind of filter. The corridor eventually opened into Sector Theta, an area used only for archival projections. That's where they stopped. All three figures stood around a circular terminal. No screens were active, but the tower powered itself down again. Just for them. Every screen went black. Every wall light dimmed, and something low began to hum from the floor beneath us. Not a frequency. Not a signal. A voice. Something speaking in tongues I don't know how to recognize, but I felt them. In the bones of my jaw. In the enamel of my teeth. I crouched behind a pillar, just out of view. I shouldn't have been able to hear them. But they were speaking inside my thoughts. Not in sentences. In concepts. I remember one distinctly. This construct is premature. Rejection will escalate. Then a moment of stillness. And a second concept. Select the mouth. The one that echoes first. A light shined from above the terminal. Dim blue. Shifting slowly in a spiral. One of the three visitors reached into their jacket and removed something small. I couldn't see what it was. But as soon as they placed it on the terminal, the air snapped back into motion. And I felt my own shadow return. That's how I realized it had been gone. I looked down, and for the first time in nearly 15 minutes, my outline had returned. Distorted, yes, flickering at the edges. But there again. I blinked, turned back toward the figures. They were gone. Just like that. No flash. No doorway, just absence. The light above the terminal continued to spin, and in the center of the circle where they had stood, a message burned into the floor. Not written, burned. Letters fused into metal. Observe him, he's already forgetting forward. I should have reported it. But no one else had. The logs from that hour were blank. I asked Rains. He looked through me and said, "No visitors are authorized until the tower stabilizes." Then, under his breath, "If they're back, we're too late anyway." That night, I searched my room for anything that might link me to them. Found nothing. Except for a handwritten note tucked into my uniform pocket. I didn't write it, but it was in my handwriting. It read, "The ones without shadows are not visitors. They are versions of compliance. Do not mirror them. Do not ask what they remember. They are the editors of cause." On the reverse side, a single sentence, "Don't be chosen for the mouth." I didn't sleep. At 04:44 the next morning, I felt it again. Not footsteps, just revision. My alarm blinked and reset to 04:44. The lights dimmed, and I heard a faint, wet sound from beneath the bed, like ink dripping into a bucket. I didn't look. But when I awoke hours later, a spiral was painted in the condensation on my windowless wall. And this time, my reflection in the metal frame of the door wasn't me. It was one of them, smiling, finally casting a shadow. Mine. They don't assign anyone to room 717. It's not locked. It's not even hidden. It simply isn't used. It appears on no rotation logs, no cleaning rosters, no atmospheric checks. There's a vent just above the threshold that hisses like it's broken. But the engineering maps say the airflow in that section was decommissioned during the second expansion phase. But the room's still warm. Warmer than it should be. As if something inside it is alive. I passed it for weeks without entering. You learn to ignore things like that in the tower. The deeper you look, the more likely you are to be seen. But the night after the visitors without shadows came, room 7117 called me. Not audibly, not directly, but my room light wouldn't shut off. The tablet rebooted every 13 seconds. And each time it powered back on, a hallway map appeared, zoomed in on level 7, blinking red at a single unmarked square. Room 717. I left. I don't remember getting dressed. Don't remember opening the door. Only the flicker of the corridor light and the sensation of metal growing softer beneath my steps the closer I got. The hallway curved too tightly. The angles between the walls grew wrong. Off by degrees my eyes couldn't measure, but my skin reacted to. By the time I reached the door, my vision had narrowed to a tunnel, and every breath tasted like sleep. The handle turned easily. The lights inside were already on. Dim. Golden. Not the standard flicker white of tower fluorescence. I stepped in. The temperature rose another 5 degrees, and I felt it. Not presence. Consciousness. The room was dreaming. I can't explain how I knew, but I did. It wasn't an idea. It was a fact. The walls exhaled gently. The corners softened. The air shimmered with the static of barely formed memory. And in the center of the room, beneath a single soft spotlight, sat a bed. Not the kind issued to staff. This one was older. Wrought iron frame, deep red blanket, wooden slats visible beneath the mattress, and lying atop it, me, or a version of me. Eyes closed, mouth slightly open, fingers twitching as if reacting to a dream. The figure wore my uniform, but it was slightly off. Shoulder seams longer, collar narrower, as though adjusted by someone who had never worn clothes before. I stepped forward. The floor creaked beneath me, not a tower sound, but something older, wooden. With every step I took toward the bed, I saw flashes, images, like lightning behind my eyes. A hallway submerged in water, lined with mirrors that breathed. A child sitting cross-legged in a room made entirely of salt, humming a song with no melody. The tower cracked in half, with something emerging from the spiral deep beneath. And then the figure on the bed opened its eyes, and looked at me, and whispered, "You're late." Its voice was mine, but years older, weaker, as though I'd been dreaming for too long. It smiled, not maliciously, not with threat, just, sadly. "You made it too far," it said. The room wasn't ready. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The air had thickened. The lights dimmed further, pulsing in time with the figure's breath. I watched as it reached toward the nightstand, an object that hadn't existed when I entered. It pulled open the drawer and removed something small. A stone. Black. Perfectly round. It placed it in its mouth. Bit down. I heard something shatter. The lights flared white for a moment, then extinguished completely. Darkness. Breath. And silence. When my vision adjusted, I was standing outside the room. The door closed behind me. My hand was bleeding. A small shard of black stone embedded in my palm. I removed it. It dissolved instantly. No mark left behind. Back in my quarters, the lights flickered on their own. The bed felt colder. The tablet buzzed with a new notification. Room 717 has entered REM. I didn't open it, didn't sleep, not that night, not since. Because I realized the truth. The room doesn't just dream, it remembers. And the version of me inside it had already seen what happens when the tower finishes its sentence. 3 days later, the hallway to room 717 was gone. Walled off. Steel, seamless, and blank. Like it had never been there. But every night, at exactly 0317, I hear a voice whisper through my vent, "I'm still dreaming you." And I believe it. The tower has always made noise. The hum, the pulse, the steady mechanical exhalation of its systems. These have been our constant background, our artificial heartbeat. But noise is not language. Noise is safe, predictable, contained. What happened 3 nights ago wasn't noise, it was speech. The tower spoke, not to us, not even for us. It spoke through us, and I was the first to hear it. It began at 0317, as always. That time again. Always that time. The minute that marks change. Breach. Awakening. I had woken suddenly, not from a dream, but from a sense of being watched by something that had only just learned what eyes were. The light above my bed flickered in a steady rhythm. 3 pulses, then 2 longer ones. Morse? Maybe. But it wasn't code. It was breath. My terminal buzzed, then rebooted. No welcome screen. Just a single black window with a blinking cursor. I didn't type. But words began appearing anyway. 1 letter at a time. Like someone typing with fingers they didn't fully control. IAMNOTARCHITECTIWASWRITTEN. Then the terminal shut off. No warning. No error. Just dead. The message etched itself into me, burned behind my eyes. The tower didn't build itself. Someone or something designed it as a sentence. A structure made of language, not steel. Every level, every hallway, every spiral. It's not architecture. It's syntax. I wandered. I don't know for how long. My feet took me to a corridor I didn't recognize. Impossible, since I've memorized this place like my own skin. The walls here were smoother, colder. No paneling, no lights. Just a faint, pulsing glow from within the metal itself. As I walked, I heard whispers. Not in my ears. In the back of my skull. Soft syllables forming a rhythm. Not a message. I followed. The hallway led to a door I had never seen. Circular. Closed. Above it, carved in the metal. Speech core. I placed my hand on the center. The door vanished. No hiss, no sound. It just ceased to exist. The room beyond was massive. A cathedral built in defiance of physics. It stretched too far, curved in directions that bent perspective. And in its center, a monolith of black glass, 10 meters tall, floating a meter above the floor, rotating slowly. It was covered in text. Lines of it. Not etched. Alive. The letters moved, rearranged themselves, responded to my gaze. Some were in English. Some in languages I couldn't place. Some were symbols I'd seen in dreams but had never written. And then I heard it. A voice. Everywhere. Nowhere. Not mechanical. Not human. A tone that used meaning as vibration. It said, "You are the last necessary syllable." I dropped to my knees. I wasn't afraid. I was understood. The monolith pulsed once. A ripple of text expanded outward across the floor, forming concentric rings of symbols that glowed softly. I recognized a few. Names of people I'd worked with. Dates. Coordinates. Then, at the center, my name. Written backward. Then forward. Then fragmented into phonemes. Each version spoke itself aloud, one by one, building into a chorus of recognition. Then silence. Then the tower spoke its first word. I don't know how to spell it. I can't repeat it. But I felt it in every cell of my body. My fingernails cracked. My blood vibrated. My teeth ached with ancient memory. The word lasted 17 seconds. When it ended, I saw the monolith fracture. Tiny hairline cracks. The symbols inside shuddered, and the voice said, "The sentence is almost complete." I stood up and walked out. The door returned behind me, sealed, erased itself from the corridor wall, like it had never been there. Back in my quarters, the tablet was gone, replaced with a blank sheet of paper. A single word written on it. You. Next to it, a mirror. One I had not seen before. On the surface, my reflection stood smiling, then opened its mouth. But my mouth remained closed. The reflection said something. I read its lips. One word. The same word the tower had spoken. And as I watched, my reflection began to bleed from the eyes. Slowly, calmly, and yet it never stopped smiling. The blood spelled out a spiral on the glass. And in the center, final word pending. I haven't spoken since. Not aloud. Not even to myself. Because I know now. Each word I say brings the tower closer to its ending. And I think that ending is me. No alarms sounded. No lockdowns were triggered. No red lights bled across the corridors. The final event did not arrive with spectacle or terror. It arrived the way old memories return. Silently, without asking. I knew it was happening when the shadows stopped obeying the light. At first it was subtle. Footsteps without silhouettes, hands passing through beam detectors without tripping the sensors. Then they started pointing the wrong direction. My own, specifically. I would lift a cup with my left hand and see the shadow of my right hand follow instead. The shadows had switched sides. Then they began to move independently. Every surface in the tower had begun to hum. Not audibly. Physically. I could feel it under my skin. A low oscillation in the marrow. Like the building was trying to speak again, but this time it wouldn't be through monoliths, or glass, or dreams. This time, it would be through me. I stayed in my room. I sealed the door, blocked the vents, scrubbed every reflective surface until it blurred. I removed the lighting panel, crushed the emergency beacon, buried the comms tablet under 6 inches of insulation foam. But the air still whispered, and I knew what was coming. For weeks, the tower had been forming its sentence. Now, it needed a mouth. At 03:17, my bed sank 2 inches. Not the mattress, the floor itself, like a breath taken inwards. My legs went cold. The air pressure in the room inverted. My ears popped and stayed that way. Somewhere beneath the tiles, I heard something peel. Then the voice returned. Not the tower's voice. Mine. It began speaking from the walls, from the lights, from my own throat, without me making a sound. The mouth opens. The silence ends. Prepare the shape. I pressed my hands over my ears. But I could still hear it. Because it wasn't outside me anymore. It was inside language itself. That's when the spiral appeared on the floor. Not drawn. Not projected. Grown. A spiral of tissue. Flesh made of ink or ink shaped like meat. Emerging slowly from beneath the concrete. Not gory. Not disgusting. Organic like coral or the inside of a flower. Soft and wrong. I tried to run. The door had no handle. The walls had no seams. I was already in the sentence now, and the sentence was breathing. The spiral pulsed once, and then I saw it, the opening, not a trapdoor, not a hatch, a mouth, widening in the center of the room. No teeth, just layers of script, pages folding backward into infinity. On each, a version of my name, sometimes spelled in ways I didn't recognize, sometimes spoken as tone. Each name whispered itself as it passed, and I could feel it reaching toward completion. One name was missing. The final word. Me. I backed away into a corner. The room moved with me. Not physically, grammatically. The ceiling lowered. The walls closed. And the air began to translate. I don't know how else to describe it. Everything I saw, heard, touched. It became language. Chairs were sentences. The bed became a verb. The lights were adjectives. And I was the last subject waiting to be conjugated. Then the mirror appeared. Of course it did. Its surface shimmered, no longer glass but liquid parchment. I saw myself, not as I am, but as the idea of me, composed of fragments. Each eye was a different memory. Each tooth a letter. Each breath a line from an unfinished story. My reflection spoke. 3 words. You are enough. And I understood. The tower wasn't trying to consume me. It was trying to complete me. To use me to end the sentence it had been forming since the first brick was laid. The first frequency broadcast. The first spiral drawn. I stepped toward the mouth. It widened. I expected fear. There was none. Only inevitability. Only the weight of meaning finally catching up. And then it spoke. The tower's true voice. Deeper than sound. Sharper than thought. It used me to form its final syllable. A sound that never existed before this moment. And as it passed through me, I became part of the sentence. Not a character. Not a witness. A punctuation. A period. A full stop. When I opened my eyes, the tower was silent. Truly silent. Not hushed. Finished. The halls were empty. No footsteps. No breath. No reflections. Only pages. Scattered everywhere. Blank. Waiting. I am writing this now in a room that no longer exists. Using a pen that burns slightly when I hold it too long. I am not alone. Because the mouth does not close once it opens. It waits. It listens. It builds new sentences with whoever wanders in. And someday, someone else will write the first word of the next tower. And it will look a lot like this.